Easton 5.0, phenomenal arrow. I built mine up specifically for Total Archery Challenge this past season. They worked fantastic there. Like I said, no durability side. And then I took them and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to run the arrow hunting. And mine were built up very simple. I ran a 300 spine. It was cut down to like 27 3/4 or 28 inches, 50 grains of brass, 100 grain head up front, stock, the standard microlite nock with a 3-fletch AAE Max Stealth. Total arrow weight was 418, 420 grains. They flew fantastic for tack, and they passed through every animal I shot for when I was hunting this year. And I shot a good buck in Kentucky with them, and I shot 2 does in North Carolina with them. My biggest thing with it was, yes, they flew really, really well. My bow, it was almost too fast out of my bow, right? I was shooting right at 300 feet per second, 299. And I was like, oh, man, they fly really, really good. I haven't had a durability side of things. But my bow was a little bit louder, as it would be with a lighter arrow, right? And I decided later on in the season, I went to the FMJ Max. And man, I've never, ever been an FMJ guy. Never. I've never liked I've always been the guy that's like, you know, you shoot them, they bend. They're the straightest arrow until they're not because they retain the bend. Listen, I think I was wrong. Yep. So I went from that 5.0 to the FMJ Max. And I ran that, again, very simple. I'm very simplistic with my arrow builds. I didn't think, obviously my Easton 5.0 was FOC focused. The FMJ Max was not. Right. It was a 465 grain total arrow build with the stock hit insert, 16 grains, the collar, which is like 16 to 18 grains, 100 grain point, AAE Max Stealth on the back, stock nock on the rear, 465 grains, quieted my bow down, right? And no, again, the question is FOC over overall arrow weight. What's the impact on it? Dude, I had full pass-throughs. I shot 3 doe this late season and not a single issue as far as pass-through. And I just felt like my bow just felt a little bit better. It was a little bit quieter. So it's made me kind of rethink things. I was always a 440-ish kind of grain guy, which was really great for hunting, but I went really light this year for tack and I carried into hunting. And while it worked really good, I just liked that little bit heavier arrow out of that Mach 33. The bow felt a little bit better. Sounds kind of weird, but it did.
No, I totally agree with you on that. So I kind of do the same thing. You know, I'll make a light arrow for tack. I'm typically right around 440 to 450.
Yeah, and when we compare ourselves, you're a much longer draw length, 30 inches. You're still shooting 70 to 80 pounds.
Right. I think my bow was like 76 pounds this entire season on my expedition. So I built those lighter arrows so I can get a little bit more speed, especially for those distance shots on tack and 3D and stuff like that. So bow does perform really great with that. I really do like those 5.0s a lot. Typically, I like to run 4 mils, but yeah, I was playing with all the 5 mils this year, and I actually really enjoyed it. It did feel like it was a little bit easier to tune on the 5 mils versus the 4 mils.
Yeah, I think that's kind of standard though. It seemed it's a more of a, I don't know the best way to put it, forgiving shaft when it comes to tuning.
Right, I think
the bigger diameter.
The recovery rate is a little bit better on the bigger diameter arrows. Yeah. So super happy with that. And then once I heard about the FMJ Maxes, I saw those like the December before.
Yeah, you were on them before any of us.
Yeah, and I was like, man, I really like that. I used to actually shoot the Axis FMJs when they first came out, and that was like 2007, 2008 or something like that. I still have some of those arrows too, which they're nostalgic. But I have been a big fan of them, and once I switched to the FMJ Maxes for hunting season, so I'm a little bit heavier than I wanted to be. I do like a heavier arrow for hunting, but I was a little bit heavier than I wanted to be. I think it was like 550 grains this year. So I normally run like a 75 or 100 grain half out, and I have 125 grain for broadheads. So I've already got 200 grains up front. So I do like that a little bit front of center weight, but nothing overly crazy, I don't think. My arrows are 29 inches carbon to carbon, and I'm still getting decent speeds. It was like 276 to 280 out of my expedition. So still getting good speeds out of it too. Makes it easier for, I think, tuning.
Agreed.
Because I do like to run fixed blades and also mechanicals. I've been playing with the wides, iron will wides. So I do like those. I don't want to be as super fast with those. I don't want to have all that surface area from the big cut on contact broadhead, dragging my arrow everywhere. So that's where I like that to be, around the 270s, 280s. But I just noticed the bow does shoot better, I think, with the FMJ Maxes. in my opinion as well. I don't know if it's just with the arrow or if it's maybe just a placebo effect, but it did seem to shoot and perform really, really well with those FMJ Maxes. And plus, impacts on targets, pulling out super easy, especially with that aluminum coating. It was just, it felt super easy to pull out of the target. So I feel like that's going to help a lot with pass-throughs as well.
I do too. And every little thing matters, right, to a certain extent. It's obviously some things are splitting hairs, but that's the big thing with the FMJ Max is if you shoot 3D targets in the winter, it's so much easier to pull them out. The Sonic 6.0s I was shooting, in the Easton 5.0s, every time you pull them out when it's super cold, there's always like targets stuck to them. And they're super hard to pull out. The FMJ Max, you don't have that problem.
I noticed that a lot with the Sonics. I don't know if it's just with the shaft, but
terrible.
Any target you shoot into a Sonic, it is honestly a pain in the butt to pull out of, in my opinion.
They shoot great.
Yeah, they do.
It's a fantastic shaft, but pulling them out of 3D targets is a pain in the butt, especially when it's cold. Yeah. But, when we talk about the FMJ Max, which is the 5 mil FMJ, right? It's the original FMJ. This is a lower GPI FMJ in the FMJ series, FMJ Max.
Right.
So a little bit less weight. That's why I never really went to the FMJ. It was just an overall heavier arrow. Right. And I like to be real, like within reason with my arrows. And 465 is, I would say, on the heavier side. And I didn't chronograph my bow and see exactly how fast it was shooting. I know it was shooting plenty fast, adding those 50 grains. But it did just make that bow, it just felt better. The bow was quieter. It tuned exceptionally well, very, very fast. There was almost minimal tuning that I had to do going from the 5.0 to the FMJ Max. Right. There was obviously a little bit different sight tape.
Right.
But the arrow just flew really, really good. And what the thing that I was really impressed about was I took these late season to Kentucky and I shot those 3 deer and there was as far as like, I got to respin them, but I shot one arrow twice into 2 different deer and the flight was phenomenal. So, I'm kind of putting my foot in my mouth with talking about, you shoot an animal, retire the arrow. That arrow, dude, they're tougher than I give them credit for. So I was really, really impressed with that. And, obviously if you shoot them into the ground or like I'm talking, shoot them into rocks or something like that, it's going to bend. It's going to ruin the arrow. It's probably going to ruin a carbon arrow too.
Right.
But they were much tougher than I gave them credit for, and they just performed really, really well. And I'm pretty sold on them at this point. Cody from Easton was the one that he was like, just try them. I'm like, man, I'm not an FMJ guy, but I'll give him a shot. I'll take him out there and see what we can do with them. And dude, I'm pretty sold on them for hunting at this point because the bow still, I can tell, shooting relatively fast. I'm going to put it in the chronograph and just get an actual number. But going from 299, it's going to be shooting in the mid 280s, I would assume.
I would venture to say, yeah. Adding 50 grains, you should be right around 280, 285.
Which is the sweet spot when it comes to tuning, right? 280s, 290-ish when it comes to tuning a bow, especially if you're shooting a broadhead. The arrow's a little bit slower. It's a little bit more forgiving. It just tunes really, really well. And this thing did. It was phenomenal. Durability side was excellent. And I like, my 5.0 was FOC focused. My FMJ Max was not, and I had the same result with both. I mean, no pass-through issues whatsoever. So, I think people get hung up a little bit on some of the things that aren't quite, they overemphasize things that aren't quite as important as what they think they are. And I think when we look at going extremes, overall super heavy arrow, overall super FOC focused, I think there's a happy medium that you can do and account for, and it's a very simple build. Right. And what we've seen, I'd say a lot this year, is a lot of people running standard stock components or the factory, the manufacturer's components versus chasing all these aftermarket components, which are a premium now. The cost of everything has gone up so much, and everybody's kind of coming back to, from what we've seen through our shop, there's not extreme. Everyone's kind of returned back to that middle ground. 420, 480 grains, depending on draw length, depending on bow poundage, and running a lot more of the standard stock components or the manufacturer's components. Right.
I think it kind of boils down to almost 2 words: overcomplication.
Yes, I would agree.
So, and it's kind of where the industry is going. All the manufacturers have all these different aftermarket components. You have all these other manufacturers that are making aftermarket components for arrows. And it can just be overwhelming. It can be overcomplicating. It's just sometimes just keep it simple. You know, it's a very awesome phrase, KISS, keep it simple, and you can do just fine. You know, they kind of say the standard that you want to have is about 8% FOC. That is like bare minimum. And with your setup, I bet you're probably about 10 to 12% FOC without doing a calculation
with the FMJ Max.
With the FMJ Max.
Yeah, I didn't do it, and I had somebody comment, and I'm like, I don't know. I didn't even know what my 5.0 was. I just know it was more so than anything I've ever run, obviously, because it's a lower GPI. I had 150 grains up front. I mean, GPI on that thing's super low.
Or actually, I'm sorry, your FMJ Max is probably gonna be around that 8%.
I was gonna say it's gotta be lower.
Yeah. I forgot you're running just the standard stuff in there. So
it worked out as far as overall weight, man. I was really impressed with it because you know a couple years back everybody was chasing extreme weight, and then we moved to extreme FOC, and it's a full circle. I mean, it's gonna it's keeps going. I mean, it'll happen again, right? Something will change.